The first thing you need to know about betrayal is that it always comes from the people you take a bullet for. The second thing is that when it happens, you'll wish someone had actually shot you instead. I'm Jamie Tate, and I've been wiring houses for 20 years. I know about circuits, about how electricity flows, about what happens when you overload a system. What I didn't know was that my own life was about to blow every fuse I had. It started on a Tuesday morning in October. I was sitting in my truck outside the Henderson job site, drinking coffee that tasted like motor oil and watching the sunrise paint the suburbs gold. My phone buzzed. "Jamie, you need to come home, now." Beth's voice was cold, clinical, like she was reading a grocery list. "What's wrong? Is one of the girls hurt?" "Just come home." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, that familiar knot forming in my stomach. Beth had been distant for months, but this was different. This had weight to it. Fortsatt, I drove through our neighborhood, Maple Grove Estates, where every house looked like it was designed by the same architect having the same boring dream. Our house sat at the end of Birchwood Lane, a colonial with blue shutters that Beth had picked out because it projected success. There were 2 moving trucks in my driveway. I sat in my truck for a full minute, watching strangers carry my furniture out of my house, my leather recliner, the dining room set we'd bought for our 10th anniversary, the girls' bedroom furniture. Beth appeared in the doorway, looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Perfect blonde hair, perfect makeup, perfect outfit that probably cost more than most people make in a week. She saw me and walked over, her heels clicking on the concrete like a countdown timer. "Beth, what the hell is going on?" She handed me an envelope. "Divorce papers. My lawyer says you have 30 days to respond." I looked at the envelope like it might explode. "Divorce papers? Are you insane? We've been married 16 years. We have 2 daughters. You can't just—" "I can, and I am." She crossed her arms. "I'm done pretending, Jamie. I'm done settling." "Settling?" The word came out like a curse. "For what? For me? For our life? For our family? For mediocrity." She said it without blinking. "You're a good man, Jamie. You're reliable. You're safe. But I want more than safe." One of the movers walked past carrying Bu's soccer trophies. My 15-year-old daughter had worked her ass off for those trophies. "Where are the girls?" "They're with me. We're staying somewhere else while this gets sorted out." "Staying where?" Beth's perfect composure cracked just a little. She looked away. "That's not your concern anymore." But I already knew. The way she'd been working late, the way she'd started dressing differently, the way she'd smile at her phone and then quickly put it away when I walked into the room. "It's John, isn't it?" Her silence was answer enough. John, my older brother. The golden child who could do no wrong. The one who'd taken over Dad's electrical contracting business when the old man retired. The one who'd given me a job out of family obligation and never let me forget it. Jesus Christ, Beth, my brother. It just happened, Jamie. We didn't plan it. Bullshit. The word exploded out of me. You don't accidentally sleep with someone's brother. You don't accidentally destroy a family. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Harder? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're taking my kids, my house, and apparently my brother. How exactly could this be harder? The girls will understand eventually. They're old enough to see that we weren't happy. We weren't happy? I was happy, Beth. I was perfectly fucking happy. She flinched at the profanity. Beth hated it when I swore. Said it was beneath us. Beneath her. You were comfortable, Jamie. There's a difference. I watched the movers load my life into trucks. 16 years of marriage, reduced to cardboard boxes and bubble wrap. So what now? You move in with John and play house? You become the queen of Tate Electric? John and I are going to make the business something special, something bigger than your father ever imagined. My father built that business from nothing. He built a small-town electrical company that barely breaks even. John has vision. He has plans. Plans that apparently include stealing his brother's wife. I was never your property, Jamie. No, but you were my wife. You were supposed to be my partner. You were supposed to be on my side. The last of the furniture disappeared into the trucks. Our house looked like a crime scene, empty and violated. I'll have my lawyer contact yours about custody arrangements, Beth said, already walking away. What lawyer? I don't have a lawyer. You'll need one. She got into her BMW, the one I'd been making payments on, and drove away without looking back. The moving trucks followed her like a funeral procession. I stood in my empty driveway, holding divorce papers and wondering how my life had gone from normal to nightmare in the span of 20 minutes. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Sorry you had to find out this way, little brother. We'll talk soon. J. I stared at that message until the words burned into my retinas. John knew I'd be coming home. John knew about the movers. John had probably been planning this moment for months. I got back in my truck and drove to Tate Electric. Time to have a conversation with my big brother. Tate Electric occupied a converted warehouse on the industrial side of town. Dad had bought the building in 1987 with a loan that took him 15 years to pay off. The sign out front still had his name on it, even though he'd been retired for 5 years. I parked next to John's pristine Corvette, cherry red, because of course it was, and walked through the front door like I owned the place, which technically I did. Dad had split the business 3 ways, 40% to John, 30% to me, and 30% to our mother. The receptionist, Mary, looked up from her desk with wide eyes. Jamie, I didn't expect to see you today. Is John in? He's on a conference call, but... I walked past her desk toward John's office. Through the glass walls, I could see him leaning back in his leather chair, feet up on his mahogany desk, talking on his headset. He was laughing about something. I opened his door without knocking. So I told her the best way to handle electrical problems is to call a professional. He looked up and saw me. His smile faltered. Hey, I'm going to have to call you back. He hung up and swiveled his chair to face me. John was 3 years older than me, but he looked younger. Better haircut, better clothes, better everything. He'd always been the one people remembered, the one they liked, the charming one. Jamie, I was hoping we could talk. Were you? Because your text made it sound like you were hoping to avoid me altogether. Sit down, please. I remained standing. How long? How long what? How long have you been fucking my wife? John winced. Keep your voice down. We have employees. Answer the question. He sighed and ran his hands through his perfect hair. 6 months. Maybe 7. 6 months. I let that sink in. So when we had that barbecue at my house in May, and you were playing catch with Bree in the backyard, being Uncle John, you were already sleeping with her mother. It wasn't supposed to happen, Jamie. It just did. Things like this don't just happen, John. You made choices. Both of you. You're right. We did. And I know you're hurt, but... Hurt? I laughed. Hurt is when your team loses the Super Bowl. Hurt is when you stub your toe. This is something else entirely. John stood up and walked to his window, looking out at the parking lot. Beth wasn't happy, Jamie. She hadn't been happy for years. So you decided to fix that for her? I decided to be there for her when she needed someone. How noble of you. Don't be sarcastic. It doesn't suit you. You know what doesn't suit me? Finding out my brother is a backstabbing piece of shit. John turned around, and for a moment I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, maybe, or regret. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I wanted to tell you myself. When? After the wedding. There's not going to be a wedding. Not anytime soon. Beth needs time to figure things out. Figure what out? She seems pretty clear on what she wants. The divorce, the custody arrangement, where she's going to live, it's complicated. Where is she going to live? John didn't answer immediately, which was answer enough. She's moving in with you. Temporarily. And my daughters? They'll have their own rooms. I have a big house. I knew John's house. 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, 3-car garage, pool in the backyard. Everything Beth had always wanted, and everything I could never afford. This is about money, isn't it? It's not about love or happiness or any of that bullshit. It's about money. That's not fair. Fair? I stepped closer to his desk. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you keeping your hands off my wife. Fair would have been you remembering that family means something. Family does mean something. That's why I'm hoping we can work through this. Work through this? John, you destroyed my marriage. You stole my wife. You're taking my kids. What exactly is there to work through? The business, for one thing. We still have to work together. I stared at him. You think I'm going to keep working here? You think I'm going to show up every day and pretend everything's normal while you're playing house with my ex-wife? I think you're a professional. I think you care about this company. I think you're delusional. John sat back down and opened a folder on his desk. If you want out, I'm prepared to buy your shares. For how much? He slid a piece of paper across the desk. I looked at the number and laughed. $30,000? John, my shares are worth 10 times that. Based on what? We barely turned a profit last year. Because you've been spending money on fancy offices and company cars and God knows what else. I've been investing in our future, upgrading our image, positioning us for growth, positioning us for bankruptcy. The offer stands. $30,000 and you can walk away clean. I crumpled up the paper and threw it at him. Go to hell. Jamie, be reasonable. Reasonable? You want reasonable? I walked around his desk and leaned down until we were face to face. Here's reasonable. I want fair market value for my shares. I want my tools and equipment. And I want you to stay the hell away from my daughters. The girls love me. I'm their uncle. You were their uncle. Now you're the man who broke up their family. I straightened up and headed for the door. Where are you going? John asked. To see a lawyer, and then I'm going to make some phone calls. What kind of calls? I paused in the doorway. The kind that let people know exactly what kind of man you really are. I spent the afternoon at the office of Patricia Wells, divorce attorney. She was a small woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an expensive suit. Her office walls were covered with diplomas and awards, and her desk was stacked with case files. How long were you married? She asked, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. 16 years. Children? 2 daughters, 15 and 13. Assets? I listed everything, the house, the cars, my share of the business, our savings accounts, retirement funds. It wasn't much by Beth's standards, but it represented 20 years of work. What about your wife's assets? She doesn't have any. She hasn't worked since Bree was born. No inheritance? No family money? Her parents died in a car accident when she was in college. No siblings, no trust fund. Patricia made more notes. Tell me about the business. I explained the ownership structure, the revenue, the assets. Patricia's eyebrows went up when I mentioned the real estate holdings. Your father was smart to buy those properties. Commercial real estate in this area has tripled in value over the past decade. John's been pushing to sell them, says we need the cash flow. I'll bet he has. She set down her pen. Mr. Tate, I'm going to be frank with you. Your wife is making a calculated move. She's trading up from a 30% business owner to a 40% business owner. Plus, she gets to stay in the lifestyle she's accustomed to. So, what do? You fight. You document everything. You make sure she doesn't walk away with more than she's entitled to. What about my daughters? That's trickier. Courts prefer stability, and if your wife is living with your brother in a nicer house, that could work in her favor. I left Patricia's office with a retainer agreement and a sick feeling in my stomach. The legal fees alone were going to cost me more than I had in savings. My phone rang as I was walking to my truck. Mom. Jamie, honey, I just heard. Are you all right? I'm fine, Mom. You don't sound fine. You sound terrible. I feel terrible. Come over for dinner. We need to talk. Mom lived in the same house where John and I had grown up, a modest ranch in an older neighborhood. She'd refused to move after Dad retired, said she liked her neighbors and her garden. I found her in the kitchen, making pot roast. She was 72 years old, but she looked younger. Still dyed her hair brown, still wore lipstick every day, still treated cooking like an art form. Sit down, she said, not looking up from the stove. Tell me everything. I told her about the moving trucks, about Beth, about John. Mom listened without interrupting, stirring gravy and shaking her head. I should have seen this coming, she said when I finished. How could you have seen it? John's always taken what he wanted, ever since he was little. Your toys, your friends, your girlfriends in high school. He never took my girlfriends. Mom gave me a look. What about Susan Morrison? Susan Morrison. I hadn't thought about her in years. My high school girlfriend, the one I'd planned to marry after graduation, the one who'd broken up with me senior year to date John. That was different. We were kids. Were you, or was it practice? I stared at her. You think John planned this? I think John saw something he wanted and took it, just like always. But Beth is a beautiful woman who likes nice things. John has nice things. Mom drained the potatoes and started mashing them with more force than necessary. What am I supposed to do, Mom? He's my brother. He stopped being your brother the day he decided to betray you. We ate dinner in relative silence. Mom's pot roast was perfect, as always, but I barely tasted it. My mind was spinning with lawyers and custody battles and the reality that my life as I knew it was over. I want you to move back in, Mom said as we were clearing the dishes. Mom, I'm 38 years old. And you're going through a divorce. You'll need to save money, and I could use the company. Ugh, what about John? He's not going to like it. John doesn't get a vote anymore. After dinner, I sat on Mom's back porch, drinking a beer and staring at the stars. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Dad, it's Bew. Mom took our phones, but I borrowed one. Are you okay? I typed back quickly. I'm fine, sweetheart. Are you okay? I guess. This is really weird. Uncle John's house is huge, but it doesn't feel like home. Where's your sister? Crying in her room. She doesn't understand why you can't just come get us. It's complicated, baby, but I'm going to figure it out. Mom says you and Uncle John had a fight about money. Of course she did. Your mom and I are having some problems, but it has nothing to do with you and Bree. I love you both more than anything. I love you too, Dad. I have to give the phone back now. The conversation ended, and I sat there feeling like someone had reached into my chest and squeezed my heart. My daughters were confused and scared, and there was nothing I could do about it. My phone rang. Patricia Wells. I've been doing some research on your brother's business practices, she said without preamble. There are some irregularities. What kind of irregularities? Expense reports that don't add up, receipts for business trips that look suspiciously like romantic getaways, company credit card charges at jewelry stores and expensive restaurants. He's been using company money to wine and dine my wife. It looks that way. If we can prove it, we can make a case for misappropriation of assets. What does that mean? It means your brother might have bigger problems than a messy divorce. After Patricia hung up, I sat on the porch for another hour, thinking about John and Beth and the mess they'd made of our lives. A plan was starting to form in my mind. It wasn't pretty and it wasn't nice, but it was necessary. John had always underestimated me. He thought I was the boring brother, the reliable one, the one who would just accept whatever scraps he threw my way. He was about to find out how wrong he was. The next morning, I drove to Tate Electric with a box of donuts and a recording device in my pocket. I'd learned a lot about surveillance equipment in the past 24 hours. Amazing what you can buy online. Mary was at her desk, looking uncomfortable. Jamie, I don't think John wants to see you today. That's okay. I'm not here to see John. I'm here to see you. I set the donuts on her desk and pulled up a chair. Mary had worked for the company for 12 years. She knew where all the bodies were buried. How are you holding up? I asked. This is really awkward for me, Jamie. I don't want to take sides. I'm not asking you to take sides. I'm just asking you to be honest with me. Mary looked around to make sure we were alone. I feel terrible about what happened. I really do. Did you know? About John and Beth? She nodded miserably. I handle his calendar. I book his travel. I've been seeing the signs for months. What kind of signs? Hotel reservations for 2. Restaurant reservations at romantic places. Jewelry purchases on the company credit card. He's been using company money. I tried to tell him it wasn't appropriate, but he said it was for client entertainment. What clients? Mary didn't answer, but her expression said everything. Mary, I need your help. Jamie, I can't. I'm not asking you to do anything dishonest. I'm asking you to do what's right. I spent an hour with Mary, going through expense reports and credit card statements. The pattern was clear. John had been using company funds to conduct his affair with my wife. Expensive dinners, weekend trips, jewelry, flowers, thousands of dollars over the past 6 months. This is fraud, I said. I know. I've been losing sleep over it. Then help me stop it. Mary looked conflicted. If I help you, I could lose my job. If you don't help me, you could lose a lot more than that. When this comes out, and it will come out, you don't want to be seen as an accomplice. She agreed to make copies of everything. While she was at the copy machine, I walked through the office, talking to the other employees, the electricians, the office staff, the project managers. Word was already spreading about the divorce, and people were choosing sides. Most of them chose mine. John's been acting like a real asshole lately, said Carl, our lead electrician, spending money like we're Microsoft while the rest of us haven't had a raise in 2 years. The man's got no loyalty, added Tom, one of our project managers. Family business should mean something. By noon, I had a folder full of evidence and a group of employees who were ready to support me. John had made a critical error. He'd assumed that people would follow him just because he was the boss. But respect isn't automatic, and loyalty has to be earned. I was sitting in my truck organizing the documents when John came out of the building. He walked over and tapped on my window. What are you doing here, Jamie? I rolled down the window. Just having some conversations. What kind of conversations? The kind where people tell me what they really think about you. John's face darkened. You need to leave. Now. Actually, I don't. I'm still a part owner of this company. Not for long. We'll see about that. I drove to Patricia's office and handed over the evidence. She spread the documents across her conference table and whistled. This is good, Jamie. Really good. Your brother has been treating the company like his personal piggy bank. What can we do with it? We can file a lawsuit for misappropriation of funds. We can demand an audit of the company books. We can make his life very complicated. Do it. Are you sure? This is going to get ugly. It's already ugly. Patricia drafted the papers that afternoon. By 5 o'clock, John had been served with a lawsuit and a demand for a forensic audit of Tate Electric's financial records. My phone started ringing immediately. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" John's voice was shaking with rage. "I'm protecting my interests." "You're trying to destroy the company. I'm trying to save it from you." "This is insane, Jamie. We can work this out." "No, we can't. You made sure of that when you decided to screw my wife with company money." "That's not what happened. The receipts say otherwise." There was a long pause. "What do you want?" "I want fair market value for my shares. I want an apology. And I want you to stay away from my daughters." "You know I can't do that last part. Beth and you are going to have to figure out how to explain to 2 teenage girls why their uncle destroyed their family." I hung up and turned off my phone. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. But the real fight was just beginning. The lawsuit hit the local business community like a lightning strike. Tate Electric had been a fixture in town for 30 years, and now the family that owned it was tearing itself apart in public. The local newspaper ran a story. Brothers battle over family business. The article was careful not to mention the affair, but everyone knew. In a town of 50,000 people, secrets don't stay secret for long. I was staying at Mom's house, sleeping in my old bedroom, surrounded by high school trophies and faded posters. It felt like going backward, but it also felt safe. Mom made my coffee the way I liked it and didn't ask too many questions. "How are you holding up?" she asked over breakfast. "Some days are better than others." "What about the girls?" That was the hard part. Bew had managed to text me a few more times, but Bree hadn't reached out at all. According to her sister, she was angry at everyone. Me, Beth, John, the whole situation. They're confused. They don't understand why their family fell apart? Do you? I thought about it. I understand that people make choices. John chose to betray me. Beth chose to leave me. I'm choosing to fight back. Mom nodded approvingly. Your father would be proud. Dad had built Tate Electric from nothing, working 18-hour days and living on peanut butter sandwiches until the business took off. He'd always said that success wasn't about being the smartest or the strongest. It was about being the most determined. I was about to test that theory. Patricia called with an update on the lawsuit. The forensic accountant found some interesting things. Like what? Like a pattern of questionable expenses going back 2 years. Hotel rooms, restaurant bills, travel expenses that don't correspond to any actual business. 2 years? But John and Beth have only been having an affair for 6 months. According to your wife. But the evidence suggests it might have been going on longer. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. 2 years. While I was working 60-hour weeks, trying to build a future for my family, my wife and brother were building a future without me. There's more, Patricia continued. Your brother has been moving money around, transferring funds between accounts, paying himself bonuses that weren't approved by the board. What board? It's a family business. Exactly. According to your corporate bylaws, any expenditure over $5,000 requires approval from all shareholders. Your brother has been writing himself checks for months without getting your consent or your mother's. What does that mean? It means we have him on breach of fiduciary duty, self-dealing, and possibly embezzlement. The word hung in the air like a threat. Embezzlement was a felony. John could go to prison. I don't want to destroy him, I said. I just want what's fair. Then you'd better hope he's willing to negotiate. That evening, I got a call from an unexpected source, my daughter Bree. Dad? Her voice was small and scared. Hey, baby, how are you? I'm scared. Mom and Uncle John have been fighting a lot. They keep talking about lawyers and money and stuff I don't understand. Where's your sister? She's here. We're both here. Mom went out, and Uncle John is in his office on the phone. Are you okay? Do you need me to come get you? I don't know. Everything is so messed up. I could hear her crying, and it broke my heart. Listen to me, sweetheart. None of this is your fault, okay? Sometimes adults make bad choices, and kids get caught in the middle. Why can't you and Mom just fix it? Because some things can't be fixed, baby. But that doesn't mean I love you any less. I want to come home. I want that too. I'm working on it. After I hung up, I sat in my old bedroom and stared at the ceiling. My daughters were scared and confused, living in a house with 2 adults who were falling apart under pressure. I had to end this one way or another. I called John. "We need to talk," I said when he answered. "I'm listening." "Not on the phone, in person." "Where?" "The office. Tomorrow night after everyone goes home." "Jamie, if you think you can intimidate me, I think we can end this like adults, or we can let the lawyers drag it out for years. Your choice." There was a pause. "Fine. 7 o'clock." 7 o'clock. I hung up and started planning. Tomorrow night, one way or another, this was going to be over. I arrived at Tate Electric at 6:30, using my key to let myself into the building. The office was dark and quiet, filled with shadows and the hum of fluorescent lights. I knew every corner of this place, every wire and circuit. Dad had brought me here as a kid, teaching me the business from the ground up. Now I was here to end it. I sat in the conference room and waited. At exactly 7 o'clock, I heard John's Corvette pull into the parking lot. He came through the front door like he owned the place, which technically he did. For now. "Jamie." He nodded and sat down across from me. "John." We stared at each other for a moment. He looked tired, older than his 41 years. The stress was getting to him. "So what do you want?" he asked. "I want the truth." "About what?" "About how long you've been planning this." John leaned back in his chair. "I haven't been planning anything. It just happened." "Bullshit. The forensic accountant found expenses going back 2 years. You've been using company money to seduce my wife for 2 years. That's not... Stop lying!" I slammed my hand on the table. "I have the receipts, John. I have the hotel bills, the restaurant charges, the jewelry purchases. I have everything." John's composure finally cracked. "Fine. You want the truth? Here's the truth. Beth came to me. She was unhappy, she was lonely, and she came to me for comfort." "When?" 2 years ago, right after Dad's retirement party. She said you were distant, that you were more interested in work than in her." I remembered that night. We'd thrown a big party for Dad at the country club, celebrating 30 years of building the business. I'd been proud, emotional, thinking about the legacy he was leaving behind. "She was drunk," John continued. "She was crying. She said she felt invisible." "So you decided to make her feel visible?" "I decided to be a friend. It wasn't supposed to go anywhere. But it did." "But it did." John stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the empty parking lot. "You want to know the real truth, Jamie? Beth never loved you. Not really. She loved the idea of you, stable, reliable, safe. But she never loved you." The words hit me like a physical blow. That's not true. Isn't it? When's the last time she looked at you the way she used to? When's the last time she laughed at your jokes or touched your hand or made you feel like you were the only man in the world? I couldn't answer because he was right. Beth and I had been roommates for years, going through the motions of marriage without any of the passion. "She loves me," John said quietly. "She always has. Even when she married you, part of her wondered what it would have been like with me." "Then why didn't she marry you in the first place?" John turned around, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Vulnerability. "Because I was a coward. Because I was young and stupid, and I thought there would always be time. Because I let you have her." "Let me? You think you won her, Jamie? You think you swept her off her feet with your charm and good looks?" John laughed bitterly. "I introduced you to her. I brought her to that party where you met. I could have asked her out myself, but I didn't." The room was spinning. "Why?" "Because I was dating someone else. Because I thought Beth was too good for me. Because I was an idiot." John sat back down, suddenly looking exhausted. "I've regretted that decision for 16 years, and when she came to me 2 years ago, crying and lonely and beautiful, I couldn't let her slip away again." I stared at my brother, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never noticed before. He was in love, genuinely deeply in love with my wife. This wasn't about conquest or ego or even revenge. This was about a man who'd been carrying a torch for 16 years and finally got his chance to light it. It didn't make what he'd done right, but it made it human. "What about the money?" I asked. "What about it?" "The company funds you've been stealing." "I wasn't stealing. I was borrowing." "Borrowing?" "I was going to pay it back. After the divorce, after we settled things with you, I was going to make it right." "With what money?" John didn't answer, but I already knew. He'd been planning to buy me out for pennies on the dollar, then sell the company properties to pay back what he'd stolen. It was a shell game, and I was the mark. "You son of a bitch." "Jamie, you were going to screw me twice, once with my wife and once with my inheritance." "It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" John was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "It was like trying to fix 16 years of mistakes all at once." I stood up and walked to the door. Well, congratulations. You've made 16 years of new ones. Where are you going? To end this. What does that mean? I turned back to face him. It means I'm calling the district attorney tomorrow morning. It means I'm pressing charges for embezzlement. It means I'm going to make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of man you are. You can't do that. Watch me. Jamie, please, think about the girls. Think about Mom. Think about what this will do to the family. You should have thought about that before you decided to destroy it. I walked out of the conference room, through the office, and toward the front door. John followed me. Jamie, wait! I stopped and turned around one last time. You know what the funny thing is, John? I would have given her a divorce if she'd just asked. I would have worked out custody, split our assets, tried to stay friends for the girl's sake. All she had to do was be honest with me. She was scared. She was greedy. And so were you. I opened the front door and stepped into the cool night air. Behind me, I could hear John calling my name, but I didn't look back. I drove home to Mom's house, sat on the back porch, and called Patricia Wells. It's Jamie. I want to press charges. Are you sure? I'm sure. This is going to destroy your brother. My brother destroyed himself. 3 months later, John pled guilty to embezzlement and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. Beth's divorce lawyer tried to argue that she was entitled to half of everything, but it's hard to claim marital assets when your boyfriend is a convicted felon who stole the money he used to woo you. I bought out John's shares for fair market value, paid to the court as restitution, and took over Tate Electric. The first thing I did was give everyone a raise. The second thing I did was change the name to Tate and Daughters Electric. Bew and Bry moved back in with me. Beth got a job at a department store and a small apartment across town. She sees the girls every other weekend, and we're civil to each other at school events. I never remarried, never even dated seriously. Some people said I was bitter, but that wasn't it. I just learned the difference between being alone and being lonely. On quiet nights, I sometimes think about what John said, that Beth never really loved me. Maybe he was right. Maybe our whole marriage was built on a foundation of settling and compromise and making do. But you know what? That's not the worst thing in the world. Sometimes settling is just another word for choosing happiness over perfection. Sometimes making do is just another way of saying you're grateful for what you have. John and Beth wanted passion and excitement and grand romantic gestures. They got prison and poverty and public humiliation instead. I wanted a family and a business and a life that made sense. I got 2 out of 3, and some days that feels like winning the lottery. The girls are in college now. Bew studying engineering, Bree studying business. They're going to take over the company someday, and they're going to do things I never dreamed of. As for John, he got out of prison last year and moved to another state. I heard he's working construction and living in a trailer park. Beth sends him money sometimes when she has it. I don't feel sorry for either of them. They made their choices, and choices have consequences. That's not revenge. That's just physics. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. I learned that in school, but I learned it again in life. And now, every time I flip a switch or wire a circuit or watch electricity flow exactly where it's supposed to go, I remember that some systems are built to last and some are built to burn out. The trick is knowing the difference.